Sadly, the popular NBC show Found was not renewed for a third season, which surprised and saddened me. I haven't really posted anything about it, but I was lucky enough to work as an extra on the show for about 5 days. I was hoping that if it got renewed for a third season that I'd be able to work on it again as an extra, but the good news is, since the show's over, I can reveal a whole bunch of set secrets about the show, how it was made, and what it was like to be on set. As a fair warning, I am going to possibly spoil some of the movie magic behind the show, so if you don't want that sense of childhood wonder to be destroyed, this video is probably not for you. First off, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone out there that the show isn't actually shot in DC. It was shot in a smaller studio in Atlanta. I'd give you some more details about the specifics, but it's a small studio, and I'm sure new things are probably shooting there, and if I gave the exact address, I don't think they'd be very happy with me. Anyone, though, who is visiting Atlanta, you'd be surprised how many different TV and film studios are speckled around the city, with many of them being just 1 or 2 turns off of a main road. Many of the studios are in commercial or industrial areas, and you really wouldn't be expecting them as they look just like a regular warehouse or another building in the area. And when I say it was shot in a studio in Atlanta, I mean almost the entirety of it was shot in that studio, more than you probably realize. They shot as much as they could on set, even many of the things you may have thought were on location or shot outdoors. One of the prime examples of this was the bus station. I'm willing to bet that many people think that this bus station was a real bus station or that it at least is a set outside, but no. The entire bus station is located inside the studio, and it was about 2 stories tall. And what about the bus? Surely the shots with the bus were outside. Well, that bus was also inside the studio, and it was a real bus, but they would just roll it in and out as needed. And since we're on the topic of the bus station, do you want to know something fun about the front of the building? Most of those glass panels actually swing out. And as you can tell, the bus station's not very big, but camera equipment is. So if you wanted to get a shot of, let's say, Margaret sitting in the front of the bus station, you'd have to be really close up to her to fit everything on the inside. But because those panels swing out, you could put the camera equipment either outside it or actually where that glass is, and you can get the shot you need. They did bring cameras inside sometimes, but since most of the shots were from the front of the station looking in, being able to move these out gave them a lot of flexibility with shooting. Now imagine that you wanted to quickly get from the bus station to the DC Police Department to visit Trent. Guess what? You're not going to need a bus. In fact, the two are so close in real life that if the bus ever got loose, it wouldn't have to go very far to crash directly into it. To give you a sense of the studio, let me John Madden this a little bit to give you a better idea how close everything really was. So here's the inside of our studio. Here on the south side we have costumes, and then a little bit above that we have background holding, which was just an area with some folding chairs. Between them there's some random storage with props, walls, and other pieces of set. Then we have BG Craft Services, which is a very important thing. And then we have the set separated by a hanging backdrop from the ceiling. On this side we have the bus and the bus station, and the bus would be kept off camera here and then rolled back and forth, and then next door over here is the police station, which was basically just the bullpen area and then a long hallway with a little square area up here that you could walk around. Then these two sections were separated by a dividing wall from a whole bunch of other set pieces like the jail and M&A headquarters and a bunch of the apartments. I was really not supposed to be around there because, this is none of my business and I don't like getting kicked off set. So over here on the right is where the props department was, and on the left behind were bathrooms and then a little area where everybody could have lunch. Catering was set up outside over here, and then the generally forbidden crew crafty was set up way up here. So now you're probably thinking, Frank, I've watched the show, and what about all those places where they went to catch a perp? They had to be on location somewhere. Well, I can't attest to all the locations. I would not be surprised if the vast majority were either on or very close to set. One example I know for sure is in episode 21, which was the last episode that I worked on. In that scene, they're tracking down some bad guys that kidnapped the wrong family, and, it looks like they're in a random warehouse, but it isn't. If you look back at our drawing, you can see that what they did was they shot up here in this little corner that already had a look like it was a warehouse, and it had a little closet here on the side, and they built a whole new wall right here, and it's just wood and veneer. That's all it takes to make a random looking space in a studio warehouse look like basically anything you want to pretty quickly. This is also why they would store things like wall sections over here at the base, because if the crew needed to make a location for next week's episode, they could quickly mock up something just with what they had that was close enough to what was needed, and then tear it down when they were done. These things were not put together to last. Like, that one wall, they did some last-minute adjustments to it to hold it stronger on take. They did shoot some on locations, but if they could get away with shooting in or around the studio, they absolutely tried to. It may seem like the show has a huge budget, but you'd be surprised how cost-effective they were to get it done right. They shot each episode in about 2 weeks, and only took a few takes for each scene before they'd move on to the next one. NBC TV shows have been some of the most frugal productions I've been on in terms of being cost-effective while shooting, and especially when you compare it to something like The Righteous Gemstones, which they shoot like they have money to burn. So when you watch and you see that the police station was looking like it was made of cinder block, guess what? That is just a foam veneer on top of a wood frame. And I found that out when I first was there and leaned on it. I was afraid that I was almost going to punch directly through it by accident because of how hollow it felt, and it was, generally pretty weakly created. It looks real though, and that's what's important. Also, if you were wondering, this is why many of the conversations between Gabby and Trent happened either in the bullpen or in the hallway, as those are all there was. And in that hallway, whenever you see a shot that's taken place there, remember that past any given corner, there's probably a ton of people that are hidden. These are people who are working on production. So, for example, on this side of the hallway, you probably have 1 or 2 production assistants or PAs that are telling the background actors when to go, along with hair and makeup people, some gaffers, some grips, and then usually Video Village with directors and assistant directors all sitting just right next to set in case they have to come out at a moment's notice. They are just barely hidden off set. Now let's get to the good part, the stars. Sadly, I'm gonna have to keep this to Mark Paul Gosselaar, who played Sir, Brett Dalton, who played Trent, and Shanola Hampton, who played Gabby, as they were really the only main cast members that I interacted with a lot. I did have some interaction with Kelly Williams, who played Margaret, but that was because she was directing the episode, and she was literally giving me directions on set. She was good, she had clear vision, great communication when she was wanting to get something out of a shot, and she was great with working with the team, even when the team kind of struggled a little bit. And so the first episode I did was the one that Kelly was directing, and I didn't know anything about the show. I mean, almost nothing. I knew it was called Found, and that they found missing people, and that it had very good ratings, but that was pretty much it. On the very last scene, they needed 2 cops. I had a decent look and hadn't been used yet, so they put me in. They placed me back in that long back hallway of the police station, and they positioned a bunch of news reporters and a camera, and I believe it was either the first or second assistant director came over and gave us a real quick rundown of the scene. She said, "This is when we bring in Sir for the first time, and he is the big bad of the show, and it's going to be the first look the audience gets at him being captured. All you need to do is walk him down the hallway while they're trying to get interviews." I had no idea who this Sir guy was, but I knew I could walk someone down a hallway pretending to arrest somebody, so it should be an easy peasy scene. We finished getting ready, and they brought out the actor who's playing Sir, And I don't remember if we were formally introduced or if it was just a, hey, these are the cops, this is the scene, because it went by pretty quick. But they did have to figure out how he was going to be either chained or handcuffed. You know, whether it was going to be in the front or whether they're going to put him behind him and behind his back. And at one point, they even thought about taking a Gatorade bottle and faking it by just holding it like that behind them so it looked like he was being handcuffed. But anyway, we shot the scene. I grabbed him by the shoulder and the arm, and we walked down the hallway, 2 or 3 steps, and we did about 3 takes, and it was done. I didn't think much of it, other than, if this makes the cut, I'm definitely going to be seen, because the real camera was only about 4 feet in front of me. I was pretty psyched about it, but didn't think much about it otherwise. And about a month later, I was talking to a patient about the show, and the first thing he said was, "Isn't that the show with the Saved by the Bell guy on it?" And my first reaction was, what's Saved by the Bell guy? And it's not because I didn't know Saved by the Bell. I grew up watching it. I just didn't know what he was talking about. I was confused, and there's also not that many guys on Saved by the Bell. So there weren't many options to choose from in terms of who he was talking about, and I definitely didn't see Mario Lopez on set, so I had to pull up the IMDb for the show, and I was going through the cast and the characters, and then it hit me. I arrested Zach Morris, and I had not a clue. I thought he was like a day player or a bad guy that was only over a couple story arc, and because it felt like it was just an everyday nothing thing, it didn't have this big pretentious air. He was professional, so it just didn't, register in my mind who it was. He was very professional, did his scenes, and then left and got ready for tomorrow. And he was like that always on set. Professional, well-prepared, and pretty much just kept to himself, so I didn't think twice about who he was. In the end, though, the scene got cut, and if you look at the episode, which was episode 13, I believe, it makes sense because Sir doesn't need to be brought into the police station at all, and it would have screwed up the whole episode if they tried to shoehorn it in. It just wouldn't have made any sense. Brett Dalton, who played Trent, was a little bit more relaxed. He was a bit more casual, still professional, but he was a little slower in terms of going back to his trailer. You'd be a little bit more likely to make small talk with people or just meander a little around set. Overall, very nice guy though. Lastly though, Shanola Hampton, who played Gabby, by far the biggest personality on set, and she was a ton of fun to work with. She was a little ball of energy, and she would sing songs and say hi to everybody and hug everybody. And for example, she hugged me before I even met her. Like, I didn't even know it was her. I was standing in the corner of the police station off camera, and this little thing just grabs me by the side and starts hugging me, and I didn't even have a chance to realize what was going on. Luckily, my instincts now after working on sets and not recognizing people is to just go with it and meet the energy they're bringing. So before I realized it was her, I just hugged back and went, hey, because in that brief moment when I saw her, I could only remember her character name, and I didn't want to just call her Gabby like I didn't know who she was. And for her, hugging everybody was normal. Like one day she went to just about every single background actor and gave them each an individual hug and talked with them. And she remembered just about everyone that she'd worked with before. If you want to get a good sense of her real personality and not just a character that she's playing, watch some of the bloopers or behind the scenes video of her, because she is much more fun than her character. And she's definitely smaller and cuter in person. Honestly, I hope she does well and moves on to bigger and better things, because she is a very skilled actress and she shows it with how well she crushed that character. So I think I'm going to end things here because this video is probably going on long enough already. But if you have any more questions about the show, I'm going to do my best to try and answer them in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Frank Chopatini with Servetti Software, and I'll see you in the next one. Servetti helps services run better. For a demo or free trial, email frank@servetti.com or leave a comment.